Have you ever poured your heart into a gift, only to watch it meet with indifference? This Mother's Day, my world turned upside down. I spent months trying to recreate my wife's mother's favorite meal, every detail painstakingly crafted. But when she finally saw it, her eyes didn't sparkle, her voice didn't tremble. Instead, she told me she wanted something completely different, a portrait of her and her mum. And in that moment, I realized maybe I had never really understood her at all. It started with a phone call I'll never forget. It was early in the morning, the sky still painted in shades of grey, a light drizzle whispering against the window. My wife's voice, usually calm and composed, cracked as she tried to form words. It's Mum. She's gone. I remember my stomach dropping, my coffee cup trembling in my hand. For a moment, the world seemed to halt, every sound muffled, every color drained. Her mother had been a constant presence in our lives, not just as my wife's parent, but as a second mother to me in ways subtle yet profound. She had a laugh that could fill a room, a kindness that lingered long after encounters. And just like that, she was gone. A sudden, unexpected departure that left an emptiness. A quiet void hovering over our home. We sat in silence that morning, the weight of grief pressing on us. I wanted to say something, anything, to ease the sharp edges of her sorrow, but no words seemed enough. All I could do was reach for her hand, hold it, and hope my presence could somehow anchor her. She barely spoke, her eyes glossed with tears, lips pressed together as if trying to keep the world at bay. I watched her move through the days that followed, like a ghost walking familiar hallways. Meals went untouched, the television flickered unnoticed, and her laughter, a sound I had taken for granted, was gone. I knew she was hurting, but I also felt lost. How could I help someone navigate grief that I could never fully comprehend? Mother's Day had always been a special day for us. It was a celebration, a small tradition we never missed. Flowers, handwritten notes, a quiet breakfast in bed. Wasn't about grandeur, but about sentiment, about acknowledgement. But this year it loomed differently. It wasn't just a day to honor mothers. It was a day that would confront the absence of one. As early spring shifted into May, I found myself wandering through the aisles of grocery stores, staring at ingredients, imagining flavors. My mind kept circling back to the recipes her mother had loved, the dishes she would prepare with such effortless grace, each bite infused with memories of care and love. Could I recreate that? Could I, a man with no culinary training beyond the basics, summon enough of her essence to fill a plate, to fill the space left in my wife's heart? I began jotting notes, scribbling down ingredients, timing, and techniques, researching recipes online, watching videos of traditional Mexican enchiladas, trying to match what I remembered her mother making. Every evening, I'd spread out my notes on the kitchen table, tracing steps, imagining aromas, textures, and tastes. It became a mission, a quiet obsession, but one filled with purpose. I wasn't just cooking. I was trying to offer her a bridge back to her mother, a way to taste her again, even if only for a fleeting moment. But as the days passed, I realized something unsettling. My wife hadn't asked for enchiladas. She hadn't hinted at a preference at all except vaguely. She wanted something meaningful, and I had interpreted that through my own lens. I thought, of course, meaningful meant effort, time, and skill. I thought it meant recreating a piece of her past, a memory she cherished. And yet, the closer I got to completing this gift, the heavier the weight on my chest grew. It wasn't just about cooking. It was about love, about connection, about understanding grief in a way that honored it without being intrusive. I began questioning myself late at night, sitting alone in the dark kitchen, illuminated only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. Was I truly honoring her mother's memory, or was I trying to assuage my own guilt for not being able to prevent this loss? The thought unsettled me, gnawed at my confidence. I wasn't sure if my gift would land as I intended, and the idea of failure loomed ominously. Yet, despite my doubts, I kept going. Each chopped onion, each folded tortilla, each simmering sauce was an act of devotion, a silent conversation between me, my wife, and the mother she had lost. By the end of April, I had created a detailed schedule. Ingredients were sourced, steps meticulously written, everything planned with military precision. I even rehearsed portions of the cooking process, timing each step to ensure the enchiladas would be warm and perfectly baked when she finally walked into the kitchen. The kitchen smelled like a memory I had never lived, yet tried desperately to embody. Red chili sauce simmered, onions caramelized, tortillas softened and layered with care. I moved through the motions like a man possessed, aware that every gesture, every aroma, every simmering pan was a thread connecting the present with the past, and yet, beneath the meticulous execution, there was a nervous tension I couldn't shake. What if she didn't react as I imagined? What if my idea of love, my idea of memory, wasn't enough? The thought was paralyzing, but I reminded myself, silently, that I wasn't doing this for validation. I was doing it because I wanted her to feel, even for a moment, the warmth of her mother's presence. That's how I spent the nights leading up to Mother's Day, lost in a kitchen that smelled of nostalgia, of love, and of a longing I couldn't fully articulate. And all the while, the clock ticked toward a day that would either bring us closer together or expose a gap in understanding that neither of us could have anticipated. I remember the first day I decided to truly embark on this mission. It wasn't enough to just find a recipe online. I needed to understand the way her mother cooked, the subtle touches that made every bite memorable. It was like chasing a ghost of the past, trying to translate her memory into something tangible. I pulled out old notebooks, asked my wife for tiny details she might remember, and scoured every corner of the internet for hints. I watched cooking videos of traditional paying attention to the folds of the tortillas, the simmering of the sauce, the layering of cheese and fillings. Each video felt both inspiring and frustrating. Nothing could capture the warmth of her mother's hands, the way she stirred with care, or the aroma that made the house feel like home. I began to take notes obsessively, scribbling down measurements, times, and even small details like how the tortillas should be slightly crispy on the edges but soft in the center dot late at night. I would sit at the kitchen table, lights dim, notebook open, and replay every memory my wife had shared about her mother's cooking. Mum always pressed the tortillas gently, she had said once, a wistful smile on her lips. Not too soft, not too hard, just enough to hold the filling. Those words echoed in my mind. I wanted to get it right, not just for the taste, but for the feeling, for the memory, for the connection between past and present. With a list of ingredients and a plan, I dove into my first trial. I chopped onions, roasted peppers, and simmered the sauce with the precision of someone attempting a delicate ritual. The kitchen became my laboratory, each utensil a tool of creation, each ingredient a piece of a puzzle I desperately wanted to solve. The first batch was disastrous. The tortillas fell apart, the sauce was too salty, and the filling didn't taste right. I remember tasting one bite and nearly grimacing aloud. I thought, okay, that's not it. Not even close. I felt a pang of doubt. Maybe I was never meant to recreate this. Maybe some things were meant to live only in memory, but I refused to give up. I adjusted the recipe, trying again and again, learning from each mistake. I experimented with cooking times, spices, and layering techniques. One even tried different types of tortillas, each with its own texture, to find the one that most closely resembled what her mother would have used. Each failure taught me something new, though the process was exhausting and often discouraging. As April gave way to May, this project consumed me. I started waking up earlier to prep ingredients, staying up late to perfect the sauce, tasting and retasting until I was confident it was as close to perfect as I could get. The kitchen, once a neutral space, now smelled of chili, roasted peppers, and simmering onions. It became a temple of sorts, where every movement carried intention and every sound a pan sizzling. A knife chopping was part of a symphony of devotion. I began noticing patterns in my thoughts. Memories of her mother surfaced unbidden. The way she laughed when a recipe went slightly wrong. The way she hummed as she worked. The gentle scolding when someone in the family tried to help too aggressively. I wanted to capture that essence, not just the flavors. I wanted my wife to taste it and feel her mother there, if only for a moment. The obsession wasn't just culinary. It was emotional. I tracked every detail meticulously, taking notes like a scientist and a poet combined. Timing of the sauce, temperature of the oven, thickness of the tortillas, balance of spices, everything mattered. I was no longer just cooking. I was trying to resurrect a presence, a warmth, a love that had vanished too soon. By mid-May, I was exhausted, but the finish line was in sight. The list of ingredients was complete, the cooking schedule meticulously written, and my confidence was cautiously growing. But with it came a heavy pressure, a gnawing anxiety that no matter how perfectly I executed, it might not matter. What if my wife didn't react as I imagined? What if my understanding of her mother's cooking was entirely wrong? What if, despite months of effort, it fell flat? The thoughts haunted me, keeping me awake at night, replaying scenarios in my mind, imagining disappointment in her eyes. Yet, in the same moment, I knew I had to proceed. I couldn't allow fear to stop me from giving her something truly meaningful. Each chop, each stir, each simmer was a small act of hope. I wanted to create not just a meal, but an experience. A moment frozen in time where love, memory, and devotion converged on a plate as I placed the last ingredients into the pan. Smelling the sauce bubble, I whispered to myself, "This is for her. This is for Mum. This is for love." And in that quiet kitchen, surrounded by the aroma of what I hoped was perfection, I braced myself for the day when she would finally see it. By the first week of May, the kitchen had transformed. It wasn't just a kitchen anymore, it had become a stage, a sacred space where every action carried significance. Pots simmered gently on the stove, their aromas weaving a tapestry of memory and anticipation. The cutting board bore the marks of countless onions and peppers, each slice a rehearsal, a step closer to the perfect dish. I moved deliberately, almost ceremoniously, measuring spices, stirring sauces, layering tortillas with care. Every movement felt amplified, every sound the sizzle of peppers, the soft bubbling of the sauce echoed like a heartbeat in the room. I imagined her entering the kitchen, the sunlight catching her hair, the anticipation in her eyes as she smelled the familiar aromas, and yet, beneath this careful choreography, there was a tension I couldn't shake. What if my performance fell flat? What if my idea of love didn't translate? The pressure was palpable, and I felt the weight of months of preparation pressing down on me. I began assembling the enchiladas, one layer at a time. The tortillas were softened just enough, their edges curling slightly, perfect for holding the filling. I spooned in the mixture carefully, folding each tortilla with precision, almost reverence. Imagining the delicate touch of her mother that I had seen in faded photographs and remembered stories. Cheese was sprinkled generously but thoughtfully. The sauce poured with a gentle hand so it enveloped each enchilada like a warm embrace. I paused often, inhaling the aroma, tasting tiny amounts, adjusting seasonings. Every layer was a meditation, a conversation with the past, a silent vow to honor her mother's memory. Time seemed suspended. Outside, the world carried on in its ordinary rhythm, but inside, the kitchen was a universe of its own, where only these enchiladas, these aromas, and my intent existed. I was acutely aware of every detail, the slight crackle as the cheese melted, the sheen of the sauce glistening under the overhead light, the soft warmth rising from the pan as the meal neared completion. I prepared the table. Napkins were folded, plates set just so, and a small vase of fresh flowers sat in the center. I wanted this to feel like more than just dinner. It needed to feel like an experience, a moment suspended in time where love and memory could be savored together. The enchiladas were golden and bubbling, the sauce rich and fragrant. I wiped my hands on a towel and took a step back, surveying the scene. Every detail was accounted for at the table, the lighting, the aroma filling the air. I felt a strange mix of pride and terror. Pride in the work I had put in, terror at the possibility that it might not be received as I imagined. I rehearsed the moment in my head, imagining her walking into the kitchen, the look of recognition and warmth, maybe even tears, crossing her face. I held my breath, hoping that all the months of effort, all the careful attention would translate into something meaningful for her. The house was quiet now, the kind of quiet that amplifies every sound, the tick of the clock, the distant hum of a refrigerator, the faint rustle of leaves outside. I stood in the kitchen, hands slightly trembling, heart pounding with anticipation. Everything was ready. The enchiladas were perfector, as close to perfect as I could make them. I glanced at the clock. Soon she would walk in. Soon, all this work, all this hope, all this devotion would meet her gaze. And I knew, deep down, that this was the moment of truth, not just about the meal, but about love, memory, and understanding. Would she see the effort? Would she feel the love? Or would my months of preparation crumble into silence and disappointment? The answer was about to arrive, and there was nothing I could do but wait. I heard the front door click open, the soft echo of her steps down the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. The months of preparation, the countless hours spent perfecting every detail, all boiled down to this single, fleeting moment. She entered the kitchen, her eyes scanning the scene. The table was set, the flowers blooming in their small vase, and the enchiladas sat steaming on the plate, a fragrant promise of love and memory. I held my breath, waiting for that spark, that subtle shift in her expression that would tell me she felt what I had poured into this meal. Her gaze lingered on the food, then drifted to me. I saw a flicker of curiosity, maybe a hint of surprise, but it was brief. too brief. My chest tightened, a sense of unease settling in as I waited for the recognition, the gratitude, the warmth I had envisioned. She picked up a fork, hesitated, then cut into the enchilada. Steam curled into the air, the aroma mingling with the tension in the room. I watched her, straining to catch a smile, a tear, anything that would validate the months of effort. And then, nothing, not in the way I expected. Her eyes didn't brighten. Her lips didn't twitch into a smile. She tasted the first bite, chewed slowly, and I saw her mind working, analyzing, processing, but there was no emotional eruption, no spark of memory, no connection I had imagined. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I had rehearsed every reaction in my head, every possible smile, laugh, or terrand. None of them matched this quiet, almost indifferent response. Finally, she put down her fork and looked at me, her expression calm, almost apologetic. "It's nice," she said softly, and I felt the words hang awkwardly between us. Then, almost in the same breath, she added, "But what I really wanted is a portrait of Mum and me." The words hit me like a wave. A portrait, not the enchilada. My stomach sank, my mind racing. All those months of preparation, all the meticulous care, all the trials and errors, and yet this wasn't what she wanted. My gift, my idea of love, my connection to her mother's memory, it had missed the mark. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I wanted to explain, to justify, to make her understand the devotion behind every step, every layer, every pinch of spice. But somehow it felt wrong, because this wasn't about me. This was about her, her feelings, her way of connecting to her mother. I sank into a chair, staring at the enchiladas, the flowers, the carefully arranged table. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion, disappointment, and a quiet, profound lesson settling in. Love wasn't about effort alone. It wasn't about recreating the past, about perfect execution, about proving my devotion. It was about understanding, about seeing her, truly seeing her, and giving her what she needed, not what I thought she needed. And in that moment, a wave of clarity washed over me. The enchiladas would always be there, a testament to my love and care, but the portrait that was the gift she actually wanted, that was the bridge to her mother, the connection I had so desperately tried to emulate. I reached across the table, took her hand, and for the first time that day, felt a quiet understanding pass between us. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what I had envisioned, but it was real. And somehow that was enough. I sat there long after she left the kitchen, the quiet of the house pressing in on me. The enchiladas, once a symbol of my devotion, now felt like a reminder of my failure to truly understand her. I replayed every moment of the past months, the research, the trials, the obsessive attention to detail, and questioned everything. Had I been so focused on recreating the past that I forgot to focus on her? Had my desire to impress, to honor her mother, blinded me to what she truly needed? The thought gnawed at me, a persistent ache that no spice, no perfected sauce, could soothe. I thought about love, not the idealized version, the grand gestures, the meticulous efforts, but the quiet understanding of another person, the ability to see them as they are and respond accordingly. Had I missed the mark entirely? Night fell, and with it came solitude, a heavy blanket that forced introspection. I realized that all my efforts, while heartfelt, were centered on my perception of what was meaningful. I had crafted a perfect meal, but had I crafted a perfect connection? The answer, painfully, was no in her eyes. The enchiladas were a gesture, yes, but not the bridge she needed to her mother. And suddenly, I understood. Love is not always about the work, the perfection, or the sacrifice. Sometimes it is about listening, observing, and giving the person what they truly desire. If it differs from your intentions, I thought of the portrait she wanted, of the memory it would preserve, of the emotion it would evoke, and for the first time I saw clearly what my gift should have been from the start, not a replication of the past, but a facilitation of her grief, a recognition of her bond with her mother. Grief, I realized, is a complicated companion. My wife's pain was hers alone, shaped by years of love, memories, and loss. And my pain, my frustration, my disappointment, they were mine, but they couldn't overshadow hers. I thought about my intentions, my ego, and my need for validation. The truth hit me. I had wanted recognition, even subconsciously, for my devotion. I had confused effort with impact, believing that love is measured by the energy invested, rather than the understanding conveyed. Sitting there in the quiet, I felt a shift. A gentle but profound clarity settled over me. It was not about failing or succeeding in her eyes. It was about recognizing her reality, her needs, her emotions. Only then could I truly honor the memory of her mother and the love we shared. I rose from the chair, my heart lighter, the weight of disappointment replaced with purpose. The enchiladas remained on the stove, warm and fragrant, testament to my effort, but no longer the measure of my love. I knew what I had to do. The portrait she desired would be the true gift, a bridge between her and the mother she missed so dearly. The rest, the food, the preparation, the hours of dedication would remain a quiet symbol of my devotion, an unspoken love that transcended recognition. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. Love, I realized, is not about perfection. It is about seeing the person you cherish, understanding them deeply, and giving them what they need, not necessarily what you think is best. And in that quiet understanding, I found hope. Hope that we could navigate this grief together. Hope that the bond between us could grow stronger, and hope that memory, love, and understanding could coexist in ways far richer than any perfectly cooked meal ever could. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. The previous day's disappointment had faded into clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. The portrait she wanted would be my gift. Not the enchiladas, not my months of labor. It was about giving her what she truly needed. I carefully gathered photographs, sketches, and memories, contacting an artist who could capture the essence of her and her mother. Every detail mattered, the way her mother's smile reached her eyes, the subtle gestures, the warmth that radiated from them both. This portrait would not be a mere object. It would be a vessel of memory, of love, and of connection. As I sent off the details, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The act of aligning my intentions with her needs was freeing. The gift, I realized, was not about impressing her, it was about understanding her, honoring her, and acknowledging her grief. Days passed, and the portrait was in progress. In the meantime, I still kept the enchiladas ready, a quiet nod to my devotion. When she returned to the kitchen, I offered a small smile, careful not to pressure her, careful to let her feel the space for herself. She noticed the enchiladas again, this time with gentle appreciation. "You really did try so hard," she said softly. And while it wasn't the emotional reaction I had once hoped for, it was honest, and that honesty mattered. I realized that love sometimes manifests quietly, not in tears or loud praise, but in subtle acknowledgement. The air between us was lighter, more open. I no longer needed validation. I only needed her to feel the care, the thought, the intention behind every gesture. And for her part, she seemed more present, more receptive not to the perfection of the meal, but to the sincerity of my effort. When the portrait finally arrived, the room transformed. She gasped softly as the artist had captured not just their likeness, but the emotion, the bond, and the love that words could never fully express. Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time, I saw the spark I had imagined when I first prepared the enchiladas. I didn't say anything. I simply held her hand, letting the moment unfold naturally. There was no need for grand gestures. The portrait, the tears, and our shared silence conveyed everything. Months of preparation, months of doubt, had culminated not in perfection, but in connection in that moment. I understood fully. Love is not about what we want to give it, is about what the other person needs, even if it's different from our own expectations. Later that evening, we sat together at the table. The enchiladas remained, untouched yet still meaningful, a quiet testament to devotion. We talked softly, shared memories of her mother, laughed lightly at small anecdotes. The grief was still there, but it was tempered by understanding, by connection, and by presence. I realized that this Mother's Day had not been about culinary perfection or elaborate gestures. It had been about growth, empathy, and listening. I had learned that the heart of love lies not in effort alone, but in awareness, in tuning oneself to the needs and feelings of the person we cherish. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the kitchen, I felt hope. Hope that we could navigate loss together, that we could honor memory in ways that were meaningful, and that the bridge between intention and understanding could be crossed with patience, care, and love. And in that quiet hope, I found peace, knowing that the journey of understanding, like love itself, was ongoing, but infinitely worth it.